Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Montessori 101, a live show all about Montessori and the magic of it. A live show from Child of the Redwoods. I'm doing this backwards, aren't I? We believe that every child does deserve a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you're live or you're joining us on a replay, maybe you're listening to the podcast, perhaps somehow you've got a transcript of this written down somewhere. I don't know. We're just happy to have you with us. We love sharing Montessori with the world. And if you'd like to know more about the work that we do with Montessori, you can head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com.
Okay, so today we are doing our next installment in the Montessori Essentials series. And today's special little shout out is to the colored beads, which I'll just hold a couple up in my hands. Hooray for the colored beads. They're
Hooray
so awesome.
for the colored beads. Yay.
Hip, hip, hooray. I love them so much. I'm sure that will become more and more evident throughout this the period of this show. And if you want to know what the other Montessori essentials are, you can go to our website. It's at childoftheredwoods.com/essentials. You can get a free PDF with all 21 of the Montessori essentials, most or all of which really can be DIY'd at home.
There are very few that you wouldn't just be able to make or find. We really put a premium on that because we want to make sure Montessori is accessible to everybody. And I see we have a few folks in the audience. Good afternoon, morning, or wherever you might be. Dawn and Janelle and everyone else listening in. Okay, well, we are here to talk about those wonderful beads. There are two kinds of beads in Montessori, at least.
Well, okay, what kinds do you think that there are?
Well, there
what
are.
What were you going to list? We'll see.
Well, I was thinking of the golden beads.
Okay.
And the colored beads.
Okay, but there are more. There's the
beads. There's also the black and white beads you use.
Okay, yes.
For the addition and subtraction.
For the snake game.
And
can you think of more?
I don't think of any other beads. No.
Okay, there's the multiplication bead set that goes with the multiplication board.
Oh, that's right, and those are
and the division beads that go with the division board.
And I guess they're technically on the beads on the counting board or the like the abacus, right?
Yes.
And those are different colors too.
The bead frame.
The bead frame,
there
exactly.
Beads on the bead frame.
Gray beads.
Yes, they're gray beads too. Yes. And the test tube division.
Oh yeah,
in
that's
lower
right.
Elementary. So there's this really cool set of beads. So they look just like the beads that go with the multiplication board and the division board, but you put them inside little test tubes. It's the coolest thing ever. I'm just imagining Maria Montessori in her classroom long ago, looking around the room thinking, what could I use
Very scrappy.
to introduce long division to children? Aha, on the science shelf are some test tubes. We'll just pop these beads in there, and it works. So today we still have test tube division. So
we do.
Have I covered it? I don't know, friends. Can you think of any other beads used in Montessori? So many. We love beads so much.
They're fun.
We integrate it into everything possible.
Well, they're great to work with. And I mean, I'm not sure exactly all the parameters, but I do know that for Maria, scrappiness was a big deal. She, as we've talked about before, she didn't set out to I don't think she set out to reform education as like an objective. I think her goal was to understand children and to help children in society. And through her scientific work, which involved children, she made all these discoveries that were we tend to apply to education, but are more broadly applicable in society. And so because of that, though, she used a lot of materials that she could either have made or she could make herself from around the environment. So I assume beads, and we talked about before, we think perhaps like a rosary could have been an inspiration for.
Well, it definitely was.
Yeah, for the beads, right? This would have been a familiar object in her world as a Catholic. And certainly the use of beads. Beads are fairly easy to come by of different types. And we're thankful for them today because they still are a very easy to DIY property. So here is, we'll talk a little bit more in just a second, but this is an example of colored beads. This is a 6 bar. And this is one that you made long ago. I think we've probably talked about these already somewhat, but they're pony beads, I think. They're just plastic. We've got them at a craft store like a Michael's or something like that.
Yep.
And
there was a Hobby Lobby back in Texas.
Hobby Lobby, yep. And then a speaker wire that we split the left and right channel apart from because it was firm enough to hold. And you and your mother, I think, made this set. Then later, many years later, more recently, you've made a more, I suppose, a beautiful, aesthetically beautiful set with these. These are glass, right?
Those are glass. Yeah.
And they have a wire, like a jeweler's wire. And you have made a set there. And the nice thing about those is that the colors are very pretty. And here you can see our 10 bar in the original set you made. It doesn't quite come through in the video, but it's kind of more peach. And the version you made with the glass beads is actually golden. And it's very, very pretty. But as with everything else, I believe, you'd correct me here, I believe just like everything else, the color themselves, and perhaps with the exception of gold, I think all of the colors are in some sense arbitrary. It's not that it's purple or red or brown that's important. It's because she was scrappy. She was working with the material she had at hand. She wanted things to stand out. Why is the pink tower pink? It's pink because it seemed to appeal to children.
Yeah, it did appeal to children, and we've since learned that color can be very meaningful to people, and I think that that's true with the colored beads as well. I actually had a comment from a mom in one of our courses who said, "Gosh, why did Maria choose such ugly colors for the colored beads?" And I was shocked. Just like, what do you mean? They're like seem good to me. Red. Yeah. What you got? What's your deal with the red and green?
We have a one. So to back up real quick. So basically, what are the color beads? They are what you would assume. They are beads that are different colors. The different colors correspond to different numbers. So red is 1 traditionally. And I think I've seen variations even within our glass versus our non-glass beads. There's a slight variation because you can't always get the true color. Green is 2, but you'll notice it's not just green. There's 2 of them, so you would call it a 2 bar. Here's a pink for 3, yellow for 4, 5 is a light blue. We have a purple for 6.
So like a lavender, yeah.
Lavender. Let's see. We have white, I think, is 7. And then brown is 8. I'm trying to make sure you guys can see it for those playing along at home. Darker blue for 9. And then gold. And that's where the golden bead version that you made that is out of glass really comes through, because the original version is more like a peach. But again,
the original for do you mean my version?
Yeah, your original version.
Yes, my original
because
version.
You couldn't get a golden plastic pony bead.
Well, neither Maria Montessori actually couldn't find golden beads either. So she chose orange to be the 10.
Oh, beautiful. I love orange. It's my favorite color. I know. Well, anyway, so the colors, so you get the sense, right? You get the idea. Like each of the string of beads, so the bar is a certain color and there's a corresponding number of beads. And the idea is that you can start to put combinations together. Like here's a 1 and a 3 bar, and that makes a 4. And then you can have your 4 bar, which in this case is yellow. And you can start to do math. I know it's too tiny to see, but you can see that there's the same number of beads. So the idea is that the color itself, it's not important, I don't think, that it's blue or yellow or whatever. What's important is that it's distinct. And so as the children are putting these things together, they can get a sense of how there is a numeric values or units within other units. They could start to explore the idea of a 5 actually is represented by 5 1s, or a 2 and a 3, or a 1 and a 4, and starting to get this abstract concept. And the colors are really just a guide to help bring that to life.
Okay, so back to my story, which was that a long time ago, a mother in our group said, "Oh my gosh, those beads are so ugly. Why did Maria pick those colors in that order?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. These is just the classic arrangement of the beads. This is
Mhm.
just the color of the beads they are. And I said, I don't care what color you choose, to put together. And she said, well, as a graphic designer,
Oh,
it really bothers me that these beads look like this. And so if you can, quickly like show the colored bead tree, even if you have, a beautiful
truer
golden,
or
true
true gold,
golden
yeah.
at the bottom. This really offended her. So, and then I started thinking, we live in a highly visual world. I mean, Maria Montessori did too. There was a lot of fine art, in her, in Rome itself, during the time that she lived. You could basically go around to any of those ancient buildings and
Yeah,
find beautiful Renaissance art just on display around.
that's true.
But she was picking these beads, and I'm imagining she picked them carefully based on their contrasts from each other.
Mhm,
So what I think we would like to do, in our modern world is, how popular the Grimm's rainbow is. Why? Because it's a beautiful rainbow and it looks so pretty. And so that mom is right. This does not have the same kind of visual appeal
yeah.
that another
There's an aesthetic appeal that this
modern
lacks. Yeah.
children's toy might have, right? So in a modern children's toy, what do you see with the color arrangements of these different
Mhm.
math manipulatives? You usually would see, like, you might see like a lime green and then a dark, and then a
Yeah.
slightly less lime green, like a regular green, and then a dark green, all next to each other. And then you might see a set of oranges, like in shades. We're really into like gradients
Yeah.
in our popular
Yeah, it would
children's
vary
toys.
probably by decade
Or
of whatever design aesthetic was most popular.
yes. Or you might have, like everything might be pastel, or everything might be like super, super neon, bright colors. You can put it down now. It's fine. Or like in a rainbow, I was thinking, why didn't she just go with Roy G. Biv, for the colored beads? Well, if you think about the contrast between red and
Green. Like
no,
here. Oh,
well,
no.
well,
What are you thinking about in the rainbow, or are you thinking
red
about?
and I was going to say
Yeah,
red and orange, because it would be red, orange, yellow,
sure.
right?
Which is pleasing.
It is pleasing to the eye. But if the child was like going to hunt through and find, the red, and then hunt through and then find the orange, not to mention a child who might be colorblind, and would have trouble making that distinction anyway.
Well, and their brain's processing all this other information about
Yeah.
this thing represents a concept and everything else.
So Maria Montessori just really wanted to make sure that the colors that she chose for this particular set of beads, the colors that were next to each other looked really different. So that's not to say that some of the colors don't look sort of similar to each other. We've got this yellow and gold, which I actually ran into an issue when creating the beautiful set. Do you have a?
No, but I was going to say the
4B
pink
there?
and the red are very hard to see the difference between. So the pink is for 3, the red is for 1, and they're very, very close.
So I ran into that trouble because I didn't know exactly when I ordered them the exact shade of pink, and I wish that I had gone for like a much lighter shade of pink, or I could have, I don't know, if maybe I couldn't find it, or I really had to source these exact colors. And also the yellow and the gold in this set is like a little bit more similar than I guess I would prefer. And I think really like Maria Montessori herself would probably prefer, given how careful she was about choosing these colors for the set. But that being said, beggars can't always be choosers. And we have different tastes and preferences. So what would happen like in real life if you gave a child a set of rainbow colored beads? They probably would work with them just fine. They probably would learn very, very quickly to distinguish the red from the orange.
I also, though, would argue, I wonder, I mean, I don't know if she had this in mind, but if you were to pick something existing, the rainbow we didn't invent the rainbow. It's just a natural phenomena.
Yeah.
So it's possible the child might think that the proper order is based on the colors of the rainbow, the spectrum, rather than this other property, which are the numeric values. And so by intentionally breaking free from an existing palette or color concept, it really does focus in, which is like, that's the whole point, right? It doesn't actually matter that they're red, blue, green, whatever. The blue isn't what matters. It's the color, it's the contrast, it stands out, and it lets the child begin to isolate down onto the properties which you're really trying to teach, which is that within this thing that we call the number 7, which looks like this, there's actually things inside of it, and those are the units and so forth. So the differentiation in the color is what kind of makes it pop. Now, I am curious if you would tell me, I always get this, how do you we have all these different kinds of beads, right? Do you think she came up with the golden beads first? Do you think she came up with the colored beads first? Do you think it was like one to the other at the same time?
Well,
We may not know.
When you work with children and start teaching them math, you realize very quickly that you need manipulatives, and that children need things to count. And so I imagine probably what came first was like something like pebbles or stones, which would lead the way to either one, the colored beads or the golden beads. I guess I don't really know for sure. My gut says perhaps the golden beads, because she was very advanced mathematical thinker herself.
Yeah, right.
And she had that rosary with her, and we know that those are usually in decades and sets of 10. So
That's right.
Probably the golden beads is what I would say.
Now, when you introduce them to
and I think that from there naturally, came the concept that instead of like only having manipulatives that were individual, that you might group them together and have them actually attach.
Like this, like into these bars.
I suspect that concept probably didn't come until after the 10 bars themselves, because I really do think that this was based on the rosary. And I think that she looked at those 10s of the rosary and was, skip counting 10 to 10 to 10 to 10.
And they're all uniform color traditionally.
They're all uniform color. And I think that concept probably came first and then the color beads, but probably not long after each other. I mean, I suspect they were kind of developed at the same time. Something that was kind of cool though was that, and I've been meaning to fix this problem. I'll show you my little basket that I've kind of got going on right now. It's kind of messy. So originally the beads that Maria Montessori kept were all, I've got these little slips of paper in here too, because we like to write on little slips of paper when we do math. That's part of DIY Montessori. So Maria actually had her colored beads or golden beads, the colored beads all mixed up in a container. I think probably in a box or something. They were just like in a cardboard box, right? Just all mixed up in there. And when you have them displayed like this, all mixed up, it actually is really hard to hunt for the particular kind of bead that you need and get it out in a timely manner. And it's actually kind of it's interesting for a young child to do that, but it very quickly becomes taxing, especially for older children who just want to do the work and get it done real fast.
That's right.
So she actually didn't have anything to do with this part, but she left these colored beads. She had teachers working for her. And so she created this set of colored beads, taught the teacher how to use it, and then just would send these teachers off to experiment with the materials. And Maria would sit in the background and kind of take notes and watch, be the scientist while her little teachers were doing the actual teaching, right? And that's kind of the way she worked as a scientist. I imagine her mind was just constantly running and full of new things, and documenting was super important to her. So one day she walks into the classroom and the teacher comes up to her and she says, "Look what I did. Look what I did." I'm going to grab this. Because what she did was she made something that's very similar to what I have in my hand. So this is a box that we got our latest round of Christmas Squishmallows in. Super popular toy. We hung them on our Christmas tree.
Yeah, they were ornament,
Yeah,
Christmas
there were
ornaments,
little Christmas
Squishmallows.
ornaments, Squishmallows. And I looked at this box and I was like, oh, I got to save that because I've got all of these beautiful colored beads and they don't have a home. And the kind of home that this teacher made was like this. The teacher had taken a cardboard box like this, rectangular box, and she had used other bits of cardboard to tape them together to make these little partitions, and so that the children could easily see that the ones were in here, the twos were in here. And Maria was shocked. She was so shocked because she had never herself even thought to take all the beads out of the jumbled mess and to organize them into such a nice little compartments. And the teacher had come up with this, and Maria was like, every school is now going to have their colored beads displayed like this. And so she immediately went to her wood shop. And when they started producing these materials, she had them make these little wooden boxes with compartments in them. But I wanted to show that to you because people go hunting around for the perfect compartments, and they often, the original, if you want the real deal, you just make it out of a cardboard box, and it's not beautiful in the way that we like to spend money on Grimm's rainbows and other expensive toys, but it's super functional for the kids. So I'll probably just get some tape and tape up these edges and just enjoy these little compartments.
Yeah, there's a tendency to, I think, to fetishize materials. We want to take their tools, and we want to take care of our tools, just like you would take care of your, lawnmower or your, hammer and nails or whatever. You want to take care of your learning materials, your learning tools, but you don't want to like fetishize them. The point of them is to use them and to make them available for kids to use, because kind of switching down to the next kind of concept, which is these have a million applications, right? There are the classic ones that we talked about before, which is they're really good at helping kids, especially on that journey to abstraction, when they're getting into toward the second plane, and they're trying to say, okay, there's this thing, it's called a number. It's actually just a couple squiggles on a piece of paper, but it means something in the same way that a letter does. But a letter has a sound, but this doesn't have a sound. It actually represents something abstract. We have the beautiful, great story about numbers that goes along with this concept of the invention of numeracy or numbers
in the lower elementary
curriculum. And it's just very hard. Like, if you really think about it, it's very, very confusing to say that this is a 10 bar and it represents a thing called a 10, which is actually made from these lines. But you can actually do all kinds of things with it. Like you can break it into smaller parts, or you can break it into multiple smaller parts, or you can then start to even do things like multiplication of two different numbers, and that you can then represent the multiplication with beads as well, or with concepts. And that when we really get down to it, we're not even talking about needing to count real physical things. It could be dreams. Like, how many dreams did I have last night? It could be any abstract concept. So it's an abstraction upon an abstraction. No wonder it took us a long time to invent mathematics.
It did. We kind of take it for granted today, but when you think back to that story of numbers that we teach the lower elementary children in the curriculum, it really shocks you how long it took. Thinking back into the Stone Age, humans like making a mark on a bone to indicate, like, I don't know, probably like got one mammoth.
Yeah,
today,
they could like represent one to one. That's easy enough, right?
We got another mammoth, right? Got another mammoth.
How many days have we been in this, spring, by this spring or whatever?
I don't know how long it took them to count time. Like,
I don't
that's
either.
Very abstract as well.
It is. That's right. Fair enough.
Another day that the sun comes up, it's a big concept. For a long time, humans really didn't have that kind of concept.
Yeah, they just followed the circadian rhythm. They were in tune with the way other animals and creatures on the earth were.
And also there's the practicality. Why do you need to count the time? The sun always comes back up, and then it always goes back down.
That's right. If the sun doesn't come up, you've got a whole other set of problems.
Why do you need to? So it really only comes into play if you are being social with another group of people, or if you're being accountable, to something.
Exactly.
So we can think about agriculture. It might be important to know when spring is coming, and you can kind of tell
Yeah.
by how cold it gets or like your weather changes.
But what's very interesting, and not to go too much, but this can be the kind of thing that can start to fascinate an older child, especially. So we could probably, it's not hard to imagine, okay, we invented numbers because of taxes, essentially, or something like that. Like this farmer owes this amount of grain, and this amount of grain is going to be given to the governments, and it's going to be spread around to pay the soldiers and the priest and the king and so forth, and all the people who aren't actually out there laboring in the field. And that's in exchange, they get the protection or whatever, right? And we need to know how many of this thing you owe and you turned in, and some kind of process through that, which is what the story of numbers talks about. But the thing is that civilization, as we understand it, had actually been around for thousands of years, to the best of our knowledge archaeologically, before they invented numeracy in the way that we think of today. So for somehow, it's important to think, like, you had gigantic, by ancient times, cities that existed without the ability to do even rudimentary mathematics in the way that we would think of it today. That's how complicated the concept is, and how recent it is when we think about all the great innovations that sort of are markers of our humanness, language and music and writing and so forth. Math is really one of the last of the great foundational things that we figured out. And so, yes, it was thousands of years ago, 5,000 years ago or something, 4,000 years ago. But talking cosmologically, it's very, very recent. And that complexity is what these devices, these materials are all about. They're really trying to help us, because even today, a lot of people struggle with math. I struggled to learn math in school because I was taught sort of the normal way, like you write down a 5 and then write down this thing is called a plus sign, and then write down this other thing. And well, now it equals 10. And I would have to count them up on my finger, when I probably what I should have been given was something like this to count, right? Instead of counting on my fingers. And that's because it's really hard. It's much, much harder than we sometimes take into account. So there are obviously a lot of great lessons that go with the numbers. And again, talking about, like, well, there's numbers within numbers and the complexity of thinking. But it's not just the basic, like, addition and subtraction lessons that you do with the beads, right? I mean, there seems like there's no end to what you can do with these beads.
There's so many. So, and there's just too many to even talk about. And I wish we could go into all of that.
I know, but maybe we could give some examples. Like, what are some classics that you think about with the golden beads?
The golden beads?
Oh, sorry, the colored beads. The colored beads.
So obviously you can put them together and add, like you showed. You could do subtraction with them. You can line them all up in a row and count a whole bunch of them. You can line up a whole bunch of the same kind. So all the threes, and then skip count all the threes. So you can do multiplication with them.
Right, because that's then leading. So if you have a series of 3, 3, 3, 3, now you're talking about, I can't remember how many threes, I had 4 there. So you have 4 sets of 3. Now you're starting to introduce the idea of multiplication, 4 sets of 3. And you can visualize this really concretely with these beads.
Yeah, it's amazing. So friends, we're out of time for today. Wish we could keep talking. I could go on for another hour about the color beads. But we will see you back next week.
All right.
Yeah, at 1:00 on Tuesday. Same time. And the topic for next week?
Just real quick before we
go.
Do
we have a question?
We do have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Took a minute to figure out how to sign in, but do you need to be a member, or can anyone see the YouTube? Anyone can see YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Oh, friends. David and I have been doing this for how long now?
Oh,
has it been a year yet?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's been I think over a year since David and I have been doing these lives on YouTube. Yeah. And there is a ton of free content all about you can learn so much about Montessori. We've got, I don't know how many essentials videos there are. They're all free. You can share them with your friends.
And we did a deep dive into that new biography of Maria Montessori.
Yeah.
That was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, legit, like, we could compile these all into a new course, but we're not going to. We want them to be free to the public. And so definitely go back and look at our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find all the
so anything
topics
that we've covered in the YouTube, the lessons or anything, they're always available And if there's any like materials that would go with it, like the essentials list, we try to make those available for free through our website. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you can join us for a program, primary and the lower elementary courses are both really comprehensive, and
Yeah.
they give you the whole curriculum.
So if you want to go
hands.
deeper,
Yeah.
or if you're looking for at-home curriculum that you want to just like not plug and play, but kind of a printable materials and lessons where it's done for you. That's the stuff that we offer through our website as for our members. But yeah, for YouTube, it's always free.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.